I'm Dr. Michael Mallin. I'm a research professor at Center for Marine Science, University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And I head up several water quality programs centered around the southeastern portion of North Carolina.
I guess first off,
what do you think about the inlet move, just in general?
A lot of people have asked me about look at him, okay. A lot of people have asked me about the moving of Mason's Inlet. And my opinion on that matter has been that the dredging itself is probably not going to be that harmful to the aquatic life there because that place has been so active in the past few years. There's not been really enough time to establish any kind of endemic flora or fauna in those waters or in that area. So my overall opinion is that it's not going to hurt the ecology of the system right there. I'm not sure as of yet if it's going to help it.
Are you aware of the public's perception, general public's perception of the bird problem as in relation to Doggy Beach and how people have come up about how the dogs have attacked the birds that have migrated here and things like that?
Okay, I have heard about the nesting bird problem and how potentially the dogs may disrupt that. I'm not the person to talk to about that as I haven't studied it. Maybe Dr. Hackney would be more appropriate. But it obviously is a valid concern, saying that the Fish and Wildlife Service is very worried about that business. So if you're asking me if the dogs are going to bother the birds, I can tell you I don't know.
Okay, now people have, I guess, expressed one of the reasons that they want people to bring bags and things like that is because of fecal coliform released to the water and things like that. Could you talk about that issue concerning Mason's Inlet?
Fecal coliform contamination of our local water bodies is probably the most widespread environmental problem that we have. And it's not a problem that comes from leaking sewage systems. And in our particular area, it's not much of a problem with leaking septic systems either. Primarily, it's what we call non-point source runoff, which means that there is fecal material out on the landscape and that runs off into the waters during a rain event. In some cases, some of this may be attributed to wildlife, but I would say that the vast majority of this material comes from domestic animals, dogs and cats in particular. And most people are not aware of this problem. They go out and they walk the dog, and the dog does its business out on the street or on the lawn or what have you, and nobody thinks twice about picking it up because of the health reasons. And it's strange because people realize that they have to treat their own waste when it goes into a toilet. It ends up in a wastewater treatment plant where it's purified before it goes out into a stream. Yet they let the dogs run free and distribute their waste out in the landscape, and they don't seem to make that connection. But something we have to keep in mind is that in terms of domestic animals, they often share some of the same pathogens, some of the same bacterial and viral and protozoan pathogens that humans can become sick from. So, in my opinion, you should treat the animal waste the same way as you treat the human waste. Now, as far as being out on the beach, I think that's a very important consideration because you have people, especially children, who are out there playing in shallow waters in the same areas that you have people who walk their dogs. And when the tide comes in and takes some of that material, it suspends it in the water column, and you have potential bacterial contamination right there. So that's my biggest concern about the dogs being on the beach, that nobody cleans up their waste, and up until now there's been no provisions made for it.
Can I ask a question here, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any way that you can tell what the source of the fecal coliform is in the water? If like whether it comes
Testing.
from human sewage or pets or any other source? Is there any way to tell anything about that?
You can differentiate between the different sources of the fecal coliform bacteria and other microbes, but it involves DNA, and it's an expensive test, and it's not commonly done by the state or the county or most laboratories in general.
So I take it that none of that's been done in the water zone?
Not around here now.
Now, with you've seen the inlet move from the top of the shell island, you said you talked about it.
Yes.
Would you say that with the dogs that are using the bathroom and not getting scooped up, does that area flush well back there, and is it a problem back there where after the inlet's been moved and things like that for, I guess, the reestablishment of birds coming in, new nesting sites and things like that? Is that a problem?
We're talking about two different things now. We're going from the fecal waste stuff, and you're talking about nesting sites for birds.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
what do you want to concentrate on, the waste?
Yeah, you're.
Yeah. Okay. Let me make a statement like this. In my opinion, if you're going to let dogs use the beach, then you should supply that area with dispensers, bags that can collect their waste, and make people legally responsible for having those bags with them so that they can pick up after their dog right away, so you don't have the bacterial problem.
I guess, has the inlet move itself had an effect on the water quality, short term, long term?
Okay, it's too early to tell. My laboratory has been contracted to assess the water quality before the dredging began and after the dredging, and we're going to continue to do that for a year after the dredging. So we have collected our samples before the dredging operation, and later this month we start doing the post-dredging operation sampling. Now, I will tell you straight off that the bacterial, at least the bacterial contamination in that area was low before the dredging began, because the intercoastal waterway is a strongly flushed body of water. The greatest amount of contamination you get in these systems is the further up you go and closer to the land sites. So fecal bacteria in tidal creeks or other coastal waters, there's three things that you have to keep in mind. Number one, when you are up in the fresher parts of the water, you are closer to the sources. So you're going to have more of these bacteria in the water at that point in time. Number two is that these bacteria tend to stay alive longer in fresher water than they do in marine waters. So fecal coliforms die off much quicker in full-strength salinity waters than they do in the fresher waters. Thus, in the intercoastal waterway, for instance, we normally have reasonably low fecal coliform counts. And of course, number three is when you're closer to oceanic waters, you're going to get more mixing and more dilution of these bacteria that come from upstream sources. Now, a problem is that the state and many federal agencies, of course, use the fecal coliform standard as their means of assessing the microbial contamination in these waters. There are other organisms, such as viruses and protozoans and other bacteria, that may not die off in salt waters as rapidly as fecal coliforms do. So even if your saltwater count is low in fecal coliforms, there could still be a substantial number of other bacteria out there and other microbes that can hurt a person, but it's not normally picked up in these tests.
And this is all caused by animal waste?
It's all caused by animal waste, except in the circumstances where you may have septic systems on soils that are inappropriate for them. And though that's not true in our immediate area, certainly down south in Brunswick County, that would be a problem in a number of areas. And again, if you have any kind of leak in a sewage line or pump station area, that would, of course, allow entry of these bacteria out into the environment.
What can fecal coliform do to a person?
Probably the best known one would be E. coli, especially one that's called E. coli 157. And in the past 3 or 4 years, and there's been a couple of major incidents where groundwaters have been polluted by E. coli 157. One incident took place in Ontario, another incident took place in New York State. And these ended up, I think they were initiated by drainage from a cattle feedlot that got into the well water, which then, in one case, it was people at a fair who were drinking that water, and quite a few of them got sick, and I think a couple of infants may have died. And up in Ontario, it got into the drinking water, and again, I think there was a couple of fatalities among infants. So it's nothing to be taken lightly.
So so fecal coliform is just a generic term for just a bunch of different kinds of bacteria?
But there's a bunch of different kinds of bacteria that are in the fecal coliform group, and these are bacteria that that thrive in the intestines of humans and other warm-blooded animals. So some of those can be pathogens, and some of them can be perfectly harmless to humans, but it's still used as the marker test for fecal pollution in the environment.
Do you think, as a personal opinion, do you think people respond to the new laws of having to keep the bag on their person and keep their dogs on a leash? Just speaking from a personal opinion, do you think that people will take that law more seriously, or do you think there ought to be something behind it, like public service announcements, things like that?
I think the more public education there is, the better, because there's a lot of people who are not aware of what the public health implications are of these, this type of fecal bacteria out in the environment from these dogs. Certainly, if you go up around the loop on Wrightsville Beach, people do take it seriously now, and they carry the bags along with them. But I think it's really critical to know that there's a good public health reason for them to do so. It's not just an aesthetics matter of cleaning something up that's unsightly, but it's something that could be dangerous to a person, or especially a small person, a child.
So you think for the most part that people don't put 2 and 2 together when it comes to that thing, that type of thing?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. Most people, like I mentioned earlier, though they know that you have to treat human waste, they don't think about the animal waste that's on the ground. And that's especially strange when you're talking about living in such proximity to shellfishing beds like we do, and knowing that everything that runs into our creeks does go down into those shellfishing beds. So,
And we end up eating
yes,
that.
we end up eating them.
When were the majority of the shellfish beds closed down? Because I know that, I've heard that you used to be able to, I guess you used to be able to go out there and get clams and oysters and stuff, but anymore it seems like all of them are after the signs.
Bradley Creek was closed, I think, several decades ago because it had the big marina on there and had a lot of heavy development around. But the majority of the closures came about in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when we saw a lot of accelerated development in other creeks like Howe Creek, Futch Creek, Pages Creek, and Hewlett's Creek. So the closures pretty much came along with the increasing amount of development in those creek watersheds.
I know your specialty is more water, fecal coliform, and things like that.
What is exactly your specialty? What would you say? Do you deal mainly with like water treatment and water?
What I specialize in is examining the quality of the waters in our local environment, and that would include the tidal creeks, Greenfield Lake, some of the freshwater streams in the Wilmington area, the Cape Fear River, Cape Fear Estuary, the coastal ocean. I'm particularly interested in what affects the water quality there. What kind of land use is affected? What kind of agriculture? Do hog farms affect it? Do various types of building practices affect the water quality? That's what I'm most interested in.
Is there a large variance in, let's say, up by Shell Island, in the water quality there as opposed to like what's just down by the jetty, south end, between the north end of Brightsville Beach and the south end? Is there a large difference in water quality?
We haven't done any studies on the beach itself. Yeah, yeah.
How about the creek and the marshes?
The creeks vary quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably the one with the worst water quality would be Bradley Creek, and then you have Hewlett's and Howe Creeks, but Futch and Pages Creek are the two creeks that are in the best shape, and they still have fairly extensive areas that are open to shell fishing.
And are those a direct response? I know Bradley Creek's pretty well populated in that area. Is that directly resulted from the population density out there? Or?
Yeah, we find that the average amount of fecal coliform bacteria in these creeks is strongly related to three things: human population, the amount of developed land within the watershed, and especially the amount of impervious surface coverage within the watershed. And that would, of course, include parking lots, driveways, roadways, rooftops, anything that the rain can't get through. Because when you have a hard surface like that, pollutants tend to settle on that surface. And then when the rain comes, it picks up these pollutants and washes it downslope towards the nearest body of water. And you have essentially this overwash of untreated runoff, untreated wastewater, and that's going downstream. Now it doesn't have the benefit of going through a waste treatment plant before it goes down to either an urban lake like Greenfield Lake or our shell fishing beds.
Okay. So I've got a question for you today. Before Shell Island, before they started the move of the inlet, they put big sandbags on the sides to keep it from eroding anymore.
Yeah.
I noticed as I kept going back to Shell Island over the past few years that those bags were eroding, breaking off, and going off into the water. Does that have any impact whatsoever on the water quality? Or I know that body of water flushes well, but does that have any kind of effect on?
You mean the bags themselves breaking up on there?
Themselves, disintegrating and breaking off.
I think it would have an effect if it was, I don't know, if it happened to interfere with a turtle or something like that, a sea turtle. But other than that, I really don't know. Yeah.
How does the increased fecal coliform in the water, how does that affect like local ecosystems? I mean, obviously it kills certain, like, what kind of animals and life forms and organisms is it killing, and like what's the overall effect of this?
In aquatic systems, the organisms present in the water, those organisms themselves don't have to worry about becoming ill from these bacteria. The bacteria usually, the bacteria and viruses, excuse me, that are generally show the sicknesses, same sicknesses that humans do. Certainly swine and poultry, that's a biggie. And this comes to us from China, a lot of it, because over there you have humans that live in close contact with their livestock. And so they are able to spread these pathogens back and forth. So when, for instance, the government devises flu shot vaccines every year, some of that material comes from swine, or it does come from poultry in different parts when they make up these vaccines. So when you hear about swine flu or avian flu, that's exactly where it comes from. So humans can pass this back and forth from humans and poultry and swine. And that's true with a number of other pathogens, and like certainly the example we just brought out with E. coli 157 and the cattle feedlot runoff. So it's the terrestrial animals that become affected by this just as humans do.
So it's not so much the organisms in the water?
Not the organisms in the water. The problem in the water is that the shellfish, for instance, will concentrate these bacteria because they're filter feeders. And then if somebody happens to eat one of these that has bacteria concentrated in it, they get real sick or have a real bad reaction and even die.
That's even if they're cooked.
I guess if you cook them thoroughly enough, but that's a chance you have to take.
Where do you take your samples? You said you took samples for the Inlet project before. Where'd you take them?
We take a couple samples in the intercoastal waterway, take them in Mason's Creek itself, and then we had a sample site in the old inlet, and now we're going to start sampling in the mouth of the new inlet as well.
Is that just for bacteria levels, or is that for sediments?
We look at sediments, suspended sediments, turbidity, and we look at phosphorus and nitrogen also.
What do those tell you?
They tell us what the levels of the nutrients are out there, and of course the nitrogen and phosphorus are largely going to be coming from land runoff. So that's another example of seeing how far the human contamination gets out there. Now the suspended sediment, some of that is simply just going to be kicked up in the immediate area, because when you have a fast current like that, it's going to stir up the sediments. Mm-hmm.
We talked to the Cape Fear Coast Keeper,
Ted Wilgus.
And he said that the dog crap on Doggy Beach is one of the worst problems, because it's not a one-time package of bacteria that comes out. He said that every time the rain hits, it releases more and more and more. Then we talked to someone else who said that when Jason mentioned the flushing was so good back there now, that it really wasn't a problem. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Actually, that was Corey.
The thing with dog poop is that if you're in a climate it's fairly damp climate, these little manure piles are going to release significant amounts of bacteria every time it rains, and this could be for a period of several weeks. So it gives us impetus to clean them up right away. And as far as the flushing activity goes, well, you know, I suppose you could be lucky and never have to worry about it, but in the rare case that someone does get sick from there, it's a major problem to them.
So what you're saying is it is a time release thing?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If it flushed perfectly out there, if it was just taken out to the middle of the ocean, well, not the middle of the ocean, but how good would flushing be at fixing the problem? If no flushing occurred, it'd be a horrible problem. How much does that help out? Normally,
if you're on a beach, you don't much have to worry about contamination. If your dogs are limited, from the beach, you don't have to worry about contamination from inshore, because it's such a heavily flushed area. Of course, if you're after a major storm event, after a hurricane, you're going to get so much material from inland that's going to come around some of the beaches, especially down in Brunswick County, that I certainly wouldn't want to go into the beach water for a couple weeks after one of those events. Good enough? All right, great.
There's those bottles.
Hey, what's that? I'm trying to get him out of that corner. Get him like right back here in the middle.
Yeah, go ahead and tear around. That's enough, dude. Shoot for 20 minutes. Do you wear bottles? Oh, touch me. Fucking fast hands, buddy. You get my nuts right there. Trying to touch wood, not that shit. I gotta reflect both with where you want. Go to camera, go squeeze, buddy. Hey, man. Hey.
I'm ignoring you. Can you tell? Let's spice up a door because it's naturally boring. What's wrong
You
with
shoot it like that.
Oh,
You
you
don't
know
want to be
everything.
Like, boom, boom, to the door, to the door.
it up and down. But yeah, it's not real good B-roll. Fish. Shit. This bullshit.
They need to fucking filter this shit or something.
What, the water?
The fucking bugs.
Ain't got nothing to do with the water.
Oh, no.
Oh, let it go, let it go.
Do that shit again.
No.
Get you have to dive in this.
It looked better from up here to make the waves, but it's cool enough. It's cool.
Yeah, I realize that you can't focus in wide angle.